The CEO's daughter stole my login to access my files, but I had already replaced them with fake data. Tomorrow, she will present it to our biggest client, while I sit in the front row, waiting for the perfect moment her lies explode. My name is Leo, and until about 6 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. I'm a senior project manager at Innovate Dynamics, one of the top tech companies in Austin. Yesterday, I discovered someone had been accessing my account after hours. That someone was Isabel, the CEO's daughter, who joined our company barely a month ago. Instead of immediately reporting her, I decided to set up something more instructive. A lesson she would never forget. If you have ever dealt with entitled coworkers who think the rules don't apply to them, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see how this unfolds. I've been with Innovate Dynamics for 6 years now. 6 long, hard, but rewarding years. I started as a junior analyst, fresh out of college, full of ideas and ambition. I worked my way up step by step, rung by rung. Our company develops enterprise software solutions for major corporations, and the industry is notoriously competitive. But Innovate takes it to another level. We're known for our cutting-edge innovations, our ability to deliver complex projects ahead of schedule. That reputation wasn't built overnight. It was built on the back of countless late nights, impossible deadlines, and the relentless drive of our founder and CEO, Arthur Reynolds. Arthur is a formidable figure. At 55, he's a legend in the tech world. He's tough, demanding, and he doesn't suffer fools gladly. But he's fair. He expects excellence, and he rewards it generously. My last promotion came with a significant salary bump that helped me finally put a down payment on my house. I've always appreciated his direct approach, his meritocratic style of leadership. I believed in the system he built. I believed that if you worked hard and delivered results, you would be rewarded. That was until he brought his daughter into the company. Isabel Reynolds, who insisted everyone call her Izzy, graduated from an Ivy League school with a business degree 4 months ago. She's 24, undeniably intelligent, and blessed with her father's charismatic confidence, but without any of the hard-earned wisdom that comes from failure. Instead of starting at an entry-level position like everyone else, Izzy was immediately appointed as a middle manager, overseeing 3 departments, including mine. I remember the company-wide meeting where Arthur introduced her. He stood on the stage, a proud father, and said, "I believe in throwing people into the deep end. Sink or swim. That's how I learned, and that's how my daughter will learn." A murmur went through the room. It wasn't just the obvious nepotism. I could have overlooked that. I really could have, if Izzy had shown even a shred of humility or a willingness to learn. But she didn't. She strutted around the office like she owned the place, which, through her trust fund shares, I suppose she technically did. It felt like a crack was forming in the very foundation of the company I had dedicated my life to. Little did I know, that crack was about to become a chasm. During her first week, I tried to be helpful. I genuinely did. I saw a young person in a new, high-pressure role, and my instinct was to offer guidance. I invited her to shadow me during a client meeting, offered to walk her through our project management systems. I remember approaching her desk. It was covered in designer trinkets, a stark contrast to the functional chaos of everyone else's workspace. "Izzy," I said with a friendly smile, "I know you're just getting settled in, but if you'd like, I can give you a rundown of our current pipeline. It might help you get a feel for the workflow." She looked up from her phone, a bored expression on her face. "Thanks, Leo, but I think I've got it covered," she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "I did a summer internship at a big firm in New York, remember? Plus, my dad and I talk business all the time. It's practically in my blood." Her arrogance was astounding, but I just nodded and walked away, telling myself to give her time. Maybe she was just nervous. I reminded myself that Arthur had always been a reasonable man. Surely he wouldn't tolerate incompetence, not even from his own daughter. So, I kept my head down and focused on my work. But the stories started to trickle in. My colleague, Frank, a veteran programmer who had been with the company since the beginning, joined me for lunch in the break room one day. His face was tight with frustration. You won't believe what happened in the marketing meeting, he said, stabbing at his salad as if it had personally offended him. Izzy told the entire team that their campaign strategy was, and I quote, something a first-year marketing student could come up with. I winced. Ouch. Was her idea any good? Frank rolled his eyes. It was literally the same approach a competitor used last year. When Brandon, the head of marketing, pointed that out, she just smiled and said, well, my father thinks originality is overrated compared to execution. She uses him like a shield for every bad idea she has. These stories became a daily occurrence. Izzy would throw her weight around, questioning decisions made by professionals with decades of experience, and always finding a way to mention her father. She started inserting herself into projects where she wasn't needed, offering unsolicited advice that was often outdated or impractical. One afternoon, she stopped by my desk while I was reviewing the final specs for a minor software update. You know, Leo, she said, leaning over my shoulder, her expensive perfume filling the air. I was thinking, we should really be implementing a blockchain solution here. I blinked, trying to figure out how blockchain could possibly apply to a simple user interface update. I'm not sure I follow, Izzy. This is just a patch for... It's about being forward-thinking, she interrupted, a condescending tone in her voice. My dad always says you have to be 10 steps ahead of the competition. I tried to explain, patiently, that her suggestion was not only irrelevant, but would also require a complete overhaul of the project, costing tens of thousands of dollars and delaying the launch by months. She just shrugged. Well, maybe your vision is just too limited. I'll mention it to my dad. I watched her walk away, a cold knot forming in my stomach. It was clear she wasn't just arrogant. She was a liability. The first real attack came a few weeks later. It was subtle, insidious, and designed to make me look incompetent. I was managing a small but time-sensitive project for a long-standing client. It wasn't a multi-million-dollar deal, but it was important for maintaining the relationship. Everything was on track for a Friday deadline. On Wednesday, Izzy brought in Dustin, a junior analyst who followed her around like a lost puppy, to observe and learn from my team. I didn't think much of it at the time. Dustin seemed eager, if a little clumsy. Thursday afternoon, just as we were compiling the final data package, the chaos began. I was in a meeting when I heard a commotion from the server room. I rushed over to find Dustin standing there, looking horrified, with a large, empty coffee cup in his hand. A dark, steaming puddle was spreading across the floor, dangerously close to our backup server rack. I am so sorry, Leo, he stammered, his face pale. I just tripped. It was a complete accident. We spent the next hour in a frantic cleanup, but the damage was done. The humidity from the spilled liquid had triggered a precautionary shutdown of the backup server. It wasn't a catastrophe, but it meant we lost our safety net. We had to rely solely on the primary system. Then came the second blow. As I was trying to coordinate with IT to get the backup server back online, I realized I was missing a crucial confirmation email from the client regarding the final data parameters. I distinctly remembered receiving it, but when I searched my inbox, it was gone. Vanished. Not in the trash, not in spam, just gone. I felt a hot flash crawl up my neck. I called the client, trying to sound calm, and asked them to resend it. They were understanding, but it caused a 2-hour delay. That night was a nightmare. Without the backup server for cross-referencing and with the delay from the missing email, my team and I had to manually verify every single line of code and every data point. We were at the office until 4 a.m. I drove home in a daze, my eyes burning from staring at a screen for 18 hours straight. I remember sitting in my dark living room, the sun just beginning to rise, and feeling a profound sense of violation. Couldn't all be a coincidence. The next morning, I stumbled into a meeting with Arthur Reynolds to report the project's completion. I was exhausted but proud we'd made the deadline. The project is complete, Arthur, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked at me over his glasses, his expression stern. I heard there were some issues. A server shut down? A delay in communication with the client? It sounds sloppy, Leo. Before I could explain, Izzy, who was also in the meeting, chimed in. I was there, Dad. It was pretty chaotic. Leo seemed overwhelmed. I stared at her. She met my gaze with a look of faux sympathy. The pieces clicked into place. The clumsy new guy, the accidentally spilled coffee, the mysteriously deleted email. It was a coordinated attack. She had orchestrated it to make me look bad in front of her father. I felt a cold, hard anger settle in my chest. This wasn't just about a job anymore. This was personal. And I knew right then that I couldn't let it go. A month after the sabotage incident, the big one landed on our desks. It was called the Apex Initiative. Apex Corporation, a Fortune 100 giant, was looking to overhaul their entire digital infrastructure. It was a massive, complex project, a contract potentially worth $50 million over 5 years. This wasn't just another client. This was the kind of deal that could transform Innovate Dynamics from a successful mid-size company into a major industry player. It meant expansion, a higher profile, and the ability to attract top-tier talent. It was, in short, the future. I remember the day Arthur called me into his office. The blinds were drawn against the Texas sun, and the room was cool and quiet. He was all business. "Leo," he said, getting straight to the point, "I need your best work on this. You have the best track record with clients of this scale. I'm making you the project lead. Don't let me down." A surge of pride and adrenaline shot through me. This was it. The chance to lead the most important project in the company's history. It was a validation of all my hard work, a sign that Arthur still trusted my abilities, despite Izzy's attempts to undermine me. I assembled my dream team, the best engineers, the sharpest analysts, the most creative designers in the company. We worked tirelessly for weeks, fueled by coffee and the sheer excitement of the challenge. We dove deep into Apex's needs, preparing a comprehensive proposal that was innovative, robust, and meticulously planned. The energy in our project room was electric. We were creating something truly special, and we all knew it. The final presentation was scheduled in 3 weeks, and everything was on track. Until Izzy decided to take an interest. She appeared at my desk one afternoon, leaning against the partition with a casual air that didn't fool me for a second. "Dad tells me the Apex Initiative could be a real game changer for us," she said, a calculating glint in her eyes. "I think I should be more involved. After all, I'll be handling the inheritance of this company someday, so I need to understand our biggest assets." I tried to be diplomatic. My blood ran cold at the mention of her inheritance. A clear power play. "We're in the final stages of preparation, Izzy, but you're welcome to review what we have so far. I can send you the overview documents." "No need," she replied with that infuriatingly smug smile. "Just copy me on all communications going forward. I learn better by being in the loop in real time." What could I say? She was the boss's daughter. I added her to our email chains and our shared drives, hoping she would just be a passive observer. But of course, she wasn't. She began questioning everything, suggesting last-minute changes that would derail our carefully crafted strategy, and scheduling pointless meetings that ate into our precious preparation time. It was clear she wasn't trying to help. She was looking for a way to attach her name to my team's success. The final straw came when she casually mentioned during a team meeting that she would be happy to take the lead on the actual presentation to Apex, the project I had poured my soul into for the last month. The air in the room went still. Everyone looked at me. I felt their eyes, waiting to see how I would handle this blatant power grab. It was nearly 9:30 on a Tuesday night when my phone buzzed with a notification. I was still at the office, the last one on my floor, finalizing some details for the Apex presentation. The building was quiet, the only sound the low hum of the servers and the gentle clicking of my keyboard. The notification was from our IT security system, an alert I had set up after the last incident. "Log into your company account from an unrecognized device." First, I thought it might be a glitch. I often logged in from my home laptop or my phone, but those devices were already authorized. This was something new. My heart started to beat a little faster. I clicked on the details and saw the login originated from within our building's network, but from an IP address associated with a device that wasn't registered to me. Then, a memory surfaced, sharp and clear. Earlier that day, During our project status meeting, Izzy had deliberately sat next to me, much closer than usual. At the time, I thought she was just being annoying, peering over my shoulder and asking pointless questions. Dustin, her loyal crony, had chosen that exact moment to drop a stack of papers right behind me, creating a loud, distracting crash. I had turned for a second, annoyed. Now I wondered, had she been watching me type my password while Dustin created the diversion? The thought made me feel sick. My hands were shaking slightly as I called Caleb, our night shift guy in IT security. He was a good kid, smart and reliable. I was hoping he was still at his desk. IT security, Caleb speaking, he answered, his voice calm. Hey Caleb, it's Leo. Sorry to bother you so late. No problem, Leo. Burning the midnight oil again. Huh. You know it, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Listen, I just got a strange login notification. Can you help me check if someone is accessing my account right now? There was a brief pause, then the sound of furious typing on his end. Yeah, there's an active session, he confirmed, his voice now laced with concern. It's coming from the executive floor, conference room B to be exact. The executive floor, where Izzy had her office, right next to her father's. Conference room B was rarely used this late. It was a small, private room with a large smart television, perfect for rehearsing presentations. Caleb? I asked, my throat suddenly dry. Can you tell what files they're accessing? Give me a minute, he said. The typing continued. My stomach was in knots. Okay. They're going through your Apex initiative folders. Proposal documents, financial projections, presentation slides. Leo, they're accessing everything. It looks like they're downloading the entire project package. My heart sank. The Apex project represented months of my team's hard work. It was everything. I leaned back in my chair, the sterile office lights suddenly feeling harsh and intrusive. I remembered how Izzy had tried to pressure me into giving her a bigger role, how she'd insisted she needed to be fully briefed. This was what she meant. She wasn't going to earn her way in. She was going to steal it. Caleb, how long has this been going on? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Let me check the logs, he said. I could hear the concern in his voice now. He wasn't just an IT guy, he was a friend. After a minute of tense silence, he spoke. Leo, this is bad. It looks like there have been similar access patterns for the past week. Always after hours, always from the executive floor. Mostly focused on your Apex materials, but... oh man, what is it? They've also been in your performance reviews and your past project files. My performance reviews, that crossed a line. Those contained confidential feedback, personal development notes, details about my salary negotiations. What was she looking for? Ammunition to use against me? A way to claim my past successes as her own? Can you tell exactly who it is? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Caleb hesitated. Officially, I can't identify a user without authorization from HR or Arthur himself. But unofficially, the access pattern matches Izzy Reynolds' badge swipes into the building and onto the executive floor. It's her, Leo. I'm almost certain. I thanked Caleb and asked him to keep this between us for now. Then I hung up and sat back in my chair, staring at the dark city skyline through my office window. My first instinct was pure rage. I wanted to storm up to the executive floor and confront her. My second instinct was to go directly to Arthur. But would he believe me over his own daughter? Izzy would likely claim I'd given her permission, that she was just being thorough. It would become my word against hers. As I was weighing my options, a memory surfaced. A story my grandfather used to tell me about a rival farmer who kept stealing his prize-winning pumpkin seeds. Instead of confronting him, my grandfather gave him a batch of seeds from a completely different, worthless gourd. He let the man plant them, water them, and boast all summer about the giant pumpkin he was going to grow, only to end up with a pile of inedible squash at the county fair. A plan began to form in my mind, cold and sharp. If Izzy wanted to steal my work, perhaps I should let her. But not the real work. Not the carefully crafted proposal that my team had poured their hearts and souls into. I would give her something that looked convincing on the surface, but was a house of cards, ready to collapse under the slightest scrutiny from experts like the Apex team. I picked up my phone and called Caleb back. "Caleb," I said, a new sense of determination in my voice. "I need your help with something slightly unorthodox." "I'm listening," he replied, his curiosity piqued. "I want to set up a shadow system, a honeypot, as you guys call it. I want to create a duplicate of my Apex files that contains altered information. I need Izzy to continue thinking she's accessing my real work, while she's actually viewing carefully modified decoys." Caleb was silent for a moment. "Leo, that's risky. If Arthur finds out." "I know," I admitted. "But what's the alternative? Let her steal months of work and potentially cost us the Apex contract with her inexperience." He sighed. "Okay, come up to the IT floor. This is going to take a few hours to set up properly." Until 3 o'clock in the morning, Caleb and I worked. We didn't just create errors. We created a masterpiece of misinformation. We altered financial projections, making them appear wildly optimistic but building in subtle inconsistencies that any CFO would spot in a second. We modified the technical specifications to include approaches that sounded impressive but were actually inefficient or outdated. We changed the implementation timelines to be so unrealistically aggressive that they would immediately raise red flags. This wasn't just about catching a thief. It was about building a stage, and Izzy was going to be the star of the show. What I didn't know that night, as Caleb and I meticulously crafted our digital trap, was that we weren't the only ones working late. Our plan, which felt so daring and secretive, was about to be discovered by the one person I feared most, Arthur Reynolds. It wasn't until weeks later, after the dust had settled, that Caleb, over a beer, told me the most terrifying part of the whole ordeal. He looked pale just recounting it. He said that around 4 a.m., just as they were putting the finishing touches on the honeypot, his anxiety got the better of him. He was a young guy with a new mortgage and a baby on the way. He was an accomplice in a scheme that, if it went wrong, could get him fired and blacklisted in the tech industry. The weight of it was crushing him. So, in a moment of panic, he did the unthinkable. He sent a priority 1, encrypted email directly to Arthur Reynolds' personal account. The subject line was just 2 words, "Urgent, Project Apex." In the email, he confessed everything. He laid out the evidence of Izzy's unauthorized access, the stolen credentials, and then, with trembling fingers, he described the honeypot plan in full detail, making sure to state that it was my idea, but he was a willing participant. He ended the email by saying he was prepared to be terminated but felt the CEO had a right to know. Then he hit send and waited for the axe to fall. He said he didn't have to wait long. Less than 10 minutes later, his desk phone rang. The caller ID was blocked. He answered it, and a familiar, gravelly voice said, "Caleb, my office. Now." Caleb told me his blood ran cold. He walked to the executive suite like a man on his way to the gallows. The office was dark, lit only by the glow of a single monitor on Arthur's massive desk. Arthur was sitting there, still in his suit from the day before, his face an unreadable mask. "Explain," Arthur said, his voice quiet but carrying immense weight. Caleb, his voice shaking, recounted the story again. He showed Arthur the logs on his tablet, the timestamps, the IP addresses, the files that were accessed. He held nothing back. When he finished, there was a long, heavy silence. Caleb was sure he was about to be fired, but Arthur didn't yell. He didn't even seem angry. He leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling for a full minute. Then he looked at Caleb, and a strange, cold gleam appeared in his eyes. "Continue with the plan," Arthur said. Caleb was stunned. "Sir, you will continue to assist Leo in every way he requires," Arthur commanded, his voice firm. "You will not breathe a word of this conversation to him, or to anyone else. You will monitor the situation and report any new developments directly to me. Am I understood?" "Yes, sir," Caleb stammered. "Good," Arthur said, turning back to his monitor. "Now get out." As Caleb walked out of that office, he realized the terrifying truth. This was no longer just my plan to catch a thief. It had become something much bigger. Arthur Reynolds wasn't protecting his daughter. He was testing her. He was handing her the rope and waiting to see if she would hang herself with it. And I, Leo, the unwitting architect of this whole scheme, was now a pawn in a ruthless father's trial by fire. I thought I was setting a trap, but I was actually performing on a stage with an audience of one. Completely unaware of the secret drama unfolding on the executive floor, I moved forward with my plan. The next morning, before heading into the office, I called my friend Rachel, who worked as a corporate attorney at another firm. I needed to make sure I was on solid ground. So, let me get this straight, Rachel said after I explained the situation, minus the part about the honeypot. The CEO's daughter stole your login, has been accessing confidential files, and you have proof from IT? That's correct, I confirmed. Leo, what she's doing isn't just against company policy. It likely violates computer fraud statutes, she said. You're well within your rights to report this. The company's interests, and your own, need to be protected. Just make sure you document everything. Every log, every timestamp. Keep a paper trail. Her advice solidified my resolve. My paper trail would just be a little more creative. At the office, I began the performance. I made sure to work visibly on the decoy files. I'd occasionally print out sections of the flawed financial projections and review them in common areas, leaving them on my desk when I went to get coffee, knowing Izzy or her little spy, Dustin, might see them. I saved updated versions of the doctored slides to the compromised folders, each one containing the subtle flaws Caleb and I had so carefully designed. Meanwhile, I instructed my team with a new protocol. Listen up, everyone, I announced in our morning huddle. Given the incredible importance of the Apex project, we're implementing extra security measures. From now on, you will only access the project files through the new secure link I sent to your official email this morning. This drive is encrypted and isolated. Do not discuss specific project details outside of this room. They seemed a little confused but complied without question. They trusted me. The real files were now safely quarantined, being polished to perfection, completely invisible to our saboteur. As the day progressed, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me was buzzing with a nervous energy, excited about the prospect of exposing Izzy's underhanded tactics. Another part was terrified that my plan would backfire spectacularly. What if Arthur sided with his daughter, regardless of the evidence? I could be risking my entire career, my house, everything I'd worked for, on this single gambit. But it was too late to turn back now. That afternoon, Caleb sent me a discreet instant message. She's in the honeypot, poking around the technical specs as we speak. I took a deep breath. The trap was set. Now all I had to do was wait for the mouse to take the cheese. That evening, as I was packing up to leave, I made a show of saving a file named apex_presentation_final_v3 to the decoy folder. It was the most beautifully flawed document I had ever created. I nodded to Caleb as I left, who gave me a subtle thumbs up from his desk. The plan was in motion, and there was no stopping it now. The next morning, Izzy strutted into the office with an air of confidence that made my stomach turn. She was wearing a ridiculously expensive-looking power suit, and she nodded at me with a smug smile as she passed my desk, heading straight for her father's office. Through the glass walls, I could see them in an animated conversation. Izzy was gesturing enthusiastically, her hands flying as she laid out her case, while Arthur listened with his usual stoic expression. I wondered, with a shiver, what he was really thinking behind that poker face. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Arthur's assistant. Leo, Mr. Reynolds would like to see you in his office immediately. This was it. I grabbed my tablet, which had secure access to both the real and the decoy files, and headed towards the lion's den. Izzy was still there, lounging in one of the visitors' chairs with a self-satisfied smirk. Leo, come in, Arthur said, waving me toward the other chair. Izzy has been sharing some thoughts about the Apex presentation. Oh, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I'd love to hear them. Izzy straightened up, her expression turning serious, as if she were a seasoned executive about to deliver a profound piece of strategy. I've been reviewing the project materials in depth, she began, and I think our approach could use some refinement. Given the importance of this client and the potential impact on my future inheritance and leadership role, I believe we should put our best foot forward. I agree completely, I said with a polite, empty smile. Great, she continued, her confidence swelling. So, I've suggested to Dad that I take the lead on the presentation. I have experience presenting to C-level executives from my time in business school, and I think a fresh, dynamic perspective would really benefit the pitch. Arthur looked at me, his eyes unblinking. What are your thoughts, Leo? You've been leading this project from the beginning. This was the moment of truth. I could object, I could fight, I could lay it all out right here and now. Or I could let her walk right into the beautiful, elaborate trap I had set. I hesitated for just a moment, long enough to make it look like I was reluctantly considering the idea. Izzy certainly brings a unique perspective, I said carefully, choosing my words like a person walking through a minefield. If you both think that would be best for the company, I am willing to support her. Though, I would like to be there as well, to help address any deep technical questions that might come up. Izzy looked momentarily disappointed that I hadn't put up more of a fight, but she recovered quickly. Of course, we'll make a great team. I'll handle the high-level strategy and vision, and you can fill in the technical details if needed. Arthur studied my face, perhaps sensing my unusual compliance. Are you sure, Leo? This project has been your baby from day one. I nodded, looking him straight in the eye. The company's success comes first. If Izzy is ready to take this on, I support that decision. Excellent, Izzy exclaimed before her father could respond. I'll start preparing right away. The presentation is tomorrow, correct? Yes, Arthur confirmed, his voice flat. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Apex is sending their entire executive team, including their CEO, Garrett Vance. I expect nothing less than perfection. He turned to me. Leo, please make sure Izzy has everything she needs. Of course, I replied. As we left his office, Izzy lowered her voice. No hard feelings, I hope. It's just business. I just gave her a tight smile. No hard feelings. I'm looking forward to seeing you in action. The bait had not only been taken, it had been swallowed whole. The morning of the presentation, the air in the office was thick with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. I arrived at 7:30 a.m., a full 2.5 hours before the Apex team was scheduled to arrive. The real presentation files were triple backed up on my encrypted drive, and I had reviewed them one last time the night before. They were perfect. The large boardroom was being prepped by the administrative staff. Water pitchers, coffee carafes, and leather portfolios embossed with the Innovate Dynamics logo were being meticulously arranged on the long mahogany table. I gave the lead admin, a kind woman named Susan, a USB drive. Susan, can you please have one copy of this presentation printed and bound? It's a backup, I said. Is this for Izzy? She asked. No, I replied, keeping my voice low. This one is for me. Please keep it at your desk until I ask for it. She nodded, sensing the unusual gravity of the request. At 8:45, our own executives began to filter in. Arthur arrived, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his expression as serious as it always was before a major meeting. He gave me a brief, almost imperceptible nod as he passed me in the hallway. Everything ready for today, Leo? Yes, sir, I assured him. The room is prepared, and Izzy should be ready to present. He gave me a searching look. You seem calm for someone who just had their project taken over at the last minute. I offered a polite smile. As I said yesterday, sir, the company's success is what matters most. He studied me for a moment longer, then continued toward his office. At 9:15, Izzy arrived. She looked slightly harried, but was dressed to kill in a designer dress that probably cost more than my first car. She was carrying her laptop and a leather portfolio, trying to look the part of a seasoned executive. Morning, Leo, she said with forced casualness. Ready for the big show? Always, I replied. How about you? Feeling prepared? A flicker of something, perhaps a hint of uncertainty, crossed her face before she masked it with her usual bravado. Absolutely. I was up late putting the finishing touches on my presentation. I think Apex is going to be very impressed. I'm sure they'll find it illuminating, I said, a small, secret smile playing on my lips. At 9:45, the receptionist called to inform us that the Apex team had arrived. Arthur went to greet them personally, while the rest of us took our assigned seats in the boardroom. I deliberately chose a spot directly across from the podium, giving me a clear, front-row view of the impending train wreck. The Apex delegation was led by Garrett Vance, their formidable CEO, known throughout the industry for his sharp intellect and ruthless attention to detail. With him were their CTO, CFO, and 3 other executives. They were all seasoned professionals, the kind of people who could smell nonsense from a mile away. Arthur welcomed everyone warmly, and then, with a proud gesture toward his daughter, he said, "And now, I would like to introduce Isabel Reynolds, who will be leading the presentation of our proposal for Apex Corporation's digital transformation." Izzy stepped forward confidently, connecting her laptop to the large screen at the front of the room. "Thank you, Father. And thank you to the Apex team for being here today." Her delivery was smooth, her opening remarks polished. She had clearly practiced. The first few slides were high-level overviews, full of buzzwords and impressive-sounding platitudes. The Apex executives seemed engaged, nodding along. Garrett Vance took notes occasionally, his expression neutral. From the outside, it looked like a perfectly normal, professional presentation. But I knew what was coming. The curtain was up, the actors were in place, and the tragedy was about to begin. For the first 10 minutes, I have to admit, a small part of me was nervous. Izzy was a good performer. She was confident, articulate, and moved through the introductory slides with an easy grace. She talked about synergy, about paradigm shifts, about leveraging core competencies. It was all corporate jargon, but it was delivered with such conviction that for a moment, I wondered if she could somehow bluff her way through the entire thing. The Apex executives were still nodding politely. My heart hammered in my chest. Then, she reached the section on technical implementation, the first minefield Caleb and I had laid. "Our approach leverages a proprietary microservices architecture," Izzy declared, clicking to a slide with a complex but fundamentally flawed diagram. "This will allow for seamless integration with your legacy systems, while providing the scalability you need for future growth." I watched Apex's CTO, a man named David Chun, furrow his brow slightly. He was a legend in the field, a guy who had written textbooks on this stuff. He leaned over and whispered something to Garrett Vance, who gave a subtle, almost invisible nod. Izzy, oblivious, continued. "As you can see from this timeline, we propose a phased implementation over 18 months, with initial deployment of core modules within the first 60 days. Now, David Chun was openly frowning. He picked up his pen and circled something on the notepad in front of him. 60 days to deploy core modules in a system this complex was not just ambitious. It was impossible. It was a promise so absurd that it was an insult to his intelligence. The CFO, a sharp-looking woman named Sarah Patel, was now also making rapid notes, her expression growing colder by the second. Izzy clicked to the next section, walking straight into the financial pitfall. "Moving on to the financial projections," she said with a bright smile. "Our analysis indicates a return on investment of 28% within the first year, increasing to a staggering 42% by year 3. Sarah Patel's head snapped up. Her pen froze mid-stroke. These numbers were pure fantasy. In our real proposal, the one locked away on my encrypted drive, we had conservatively and realistically estimated a 15% ROI in year 1, rising to 25% by year 3 if everything went perfectly. Garrett Vance raised a hand, interrupting her. "Ms. Reynolds," he said, his voice calm but with an edge of steel. "Could you explain how you arrived at these ROI figures? They seem quite aggressive compared to industry benchmarks." Izzy hesitated for just a split second, a tiny crack in her confident facade. "Of course," she said, recovering quickly. "Our calculations are based on efficiency gains from automation, reduced operational costs, and increased market share." "Yes?" Vance pressed. not letting her off the hook. But what specific metrics and assumptions are you using? For example, what percentage of operational cost reduction are you projecting in year 1 to reach that 28% figure? Izzy shuffled through her notes, a flicker of panic in her eyes. She was clearly searching for details that didn't exist. Approximately a 22% reduction in operational costs, she finally managed to say. David Chun, the CTO, couldn't contain himself. He let out a short, sharp sound, almost a laugh of disbelief. 22%? He asked, his voice dripping with skepticism. That's nearly double what even the most successful, best-case scenario implementations achieve. What technological breakthroughs are you incorporating that the rest of the industry has somehow missed? The trap was sprung. The questions were coming, and she had no answers. The room grew tense, the air crackling with unspoken doubt. The room had become uncomfortably quiet. All eyes were on Izzy, who was visibly floundering. Her confident smile had been replaced by a tight, strained grimace. She started throwing out technical jargon, hoping to confuse the issue, but it only made things worse. She was misusing terms, putting concepts together that made no sense. It was like watching someone who had only read the back cover of a book try to give a lecture on its contents. I could see Arthur Reynolds out of the corner of my eye. He was shifting in his seat, his jaw tight, glancing between his struggling daughter and the increasingly skeptical faces of the Apex executives. He made no move to help her. He just watched. Garrett Vance interrupted Izzy's stream of nonsensical buzzwords. Let's move on to the implementation timeline for a moment, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. You mentioned initial deployment within 60 days. Your own diagram shows dependencies on systems integration and data migration that typically take months, sometimes a full year, to complete. Can you walk us through, step by step, how you plan to accomplish this accelerated schedule? Izzy was sweating now. A small bead of perspiration trickled down her temple. Her earlier confidence had completely evaporated, replaced by a desperate, deer-in-the-headlights terror. Well, we have a very experienced team, she stammered, gesturing vaguely in my direction. They've done similar integrations before, and we plan to allocate additional resources to ensure timely delivery. Sarah Patel, the CFO, pounced on that. Additional resources mean additional costs, she pointed out, her voice sharp as a razor. Yet, your budget doesn't reflect this. In fact, your cost projections seem significantly lower than what we would expect for a project of this scope. Where are these additional resources accounted for in your financial model, Ms. Reynolds? Izzy was speechless. She just stood there, opening and closing her mouth like a fish out of water. She looked at her notes, then back at the screen, then at her father, a silent plea for help in her eyes. But Arthur's face was like stone. Finally, he intervened, but not in the way she had hoped. Perhaps we should take a short break, he announced to the room, his voice strained. Then he looked directly at his daughter. Isabel, could I speak with you for a moment outside? It was a command, not a request. As they stepped out of the boardroom, an awkward, suffocating silence fell over the room. The remaining Apex executives exchanged meaningful glances. They knew. They had seen through the entire charade. Garrett Vance then turned his piercing gaze directly to me. Leo, I believe you were originally the project lead on this, he said, his voice low and serious. Would you care to comment on some of these discrepancies? This was it, the moment of truth, the culmination of weeks of planning and sleepless nights. The explosion I had been waiting for had happened. Now it was time to clear the smoke and show them what was real. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every eye in the room on me. I stood up, my heart pounding, but my voice came out steady and clear. Mr. Vance, you and your team are right to be skeptical. There are indeed some significant inconsistencies in the presentation you just saw. Before I could continue, the boardroom door opened and Arthur returned. Alone. His face was a thunderous mask of anger and profound embarrassment. Izzy was nowhere to be seen. Ladies and gentlemen, Arthur said, his voice tight with controlled fury. I apologize for the confusion. It appears there may have been some internal issues with the presentation materials. Leo, would you be able to clarify the points raised by the Apex team? Of course, I said, turning to face everyone. But first, I believe I should explain what has happened here today. I took a deep breath. This was the most dangerous part of the plan. I was about to publicly expose my boss's daughter in front of him and our most important potential client. Over the past week, I began, my voice ringing with clarity in the silent room. Someone has been accessing my account after hours, viewing and downloading confidential files related to this project without my authorization. I saw a flicker of something in Arthur's eyes, but his expression remained unchanged. When I discovered this unauthorized access, I consulted with our IT security team. I nodded toward Caleb, who had joined us for the presentation at my request. Caleb stood up, holding his tablet. That is correct, he confirmed, his voice professional and firm. Our security logs show multiple instances of Leo's credentials being used from unauthorized devices, specifically from Conference Room B on the executive floor, at times when Leo was not in the building. The system logs, building entry records, and device fingerprints all point to Isabel Reynolds. Just then, the door burst open and Izzy stormed back in, her face flushed and streaked with tears of rage. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "He's trying to sabotage me. He's jealous that you chose me to lead the presentation, Dad." "Actually," I said calmly, turning to face her directly, "I have evidence that you stole my login credentials while your associate, Dustin, created a distraction. When I discovered this, rather than immediately reporting you, I worked with IT to create a set of decoy files containing subtle inaccuracies and misleading information. Those are the files you accessed, Izzy. And those are the files you presented today." The room fell completely silent. Even the Apex team seemed stunned by the revelation. That's preposterous," Izzy sputtered. "Why would I need to steal your login? I'm an executive of this company. My inheritance gives me the right to access everything. Not my personal project files," I shot back. "And certainly not my performance reviews, which you also accessed repeatedly." Arthur looked stricken. "Isabel, is this true?" Before she could lie again, I played my final card. I turned to Susan, the admin assistant, who was hovering nervously by the door. "Susan, could you please bring in the backup presentation I gave you this morning?" As she hurried off, I addressed the Apex team. "What you just saw was a deliberately flawed version of our proposal. It was a trap, and I apologize that you had to be the bait. But the real plan, the one my team has poured their souls into, is ready. It includes realistic timelines, accurate financial projections based on sound data, and technically sound implementation strategies." Susan returned with the professionally bound presentation packages. I distributed them to the Apex team and to Arthur. Then I connected my own laptop to the display system. "If you will allow me," I said, my own presentation now lighting up the screen, "I would like to walk you through our actual proposal for Apex Corporation's digital transformation. Thank you for staying with me until now. Please show your support by liking this video and typing 1 in the comments below. It lets me know that you've given me a like and are here with me on this journey. Your encouragement is a huge source of motivation. Comment number 1 below and stay with me as I continue my story." For the next 45 minutes, I presented the real plan. I moved through the slides with a confidence born not of arrogance, but of deep, intimate knowledge of the material. I methodically addressed each point of confusion from Izzy's presentation. I explained our true technical approach, a solution that was both elegant and robust. I walked them through the realistic, 18-month implementation timeline, highlighting the key milestones and potential challenges we had already planned for. I presented the conservative but promising financial projections, backing up every number with solid data and market analysis. As I spoke, I could see the tension leaving the room. The Apex team started to relax, to lean forward, to engage. They began asking sharp, insightful questions, the kind of questions you ask when you're seriously considering a proposal, not when you're trying to poke holes in it. And for every question, I had a well-reasoned, detailed answer. Throughout my presentation, Izzy sat silently in a chair at the back of the room, her expression a toxic mixture of anger and utter humiliation. Arthur watched me intently, his initial shock gradually giving way to what appeared to be a grudging respect. He wasn't just watching a presentation. He was seeing the stark contrast between someone who had earned their position and someone who had tried to steal it. When I finished, Garrett Vance nodded thoughtfully. "This," he said, tapping the bound proposal on the table, "makes much more sense. Your approach is both ambitious and grounded in reality, which is exactly what we're looking for in a technology partner." "Thank you," I replied. "My team has worked incredibly hard on this." Vance turned to Arthur. "We still have some points to negotiate, but I believe this gives us a solid foundation to work from. My team will be in touch to schedule a follow-up meeting next week." As the meeting wrapped up and the Apex team left, Arthur asked me to stay behind. On her way out, Izzy shot me a look of pure hatred that could have curdled milk. The door closed, leaving me alone with the CEO, the father of the woman I had just publicly destroyed. Arthur sat heavily in one of the chairs, loosening his tie with a weary gesture. For a long moment he just stared at the table. When he finally looked up, his expression was complex. "You took an incredible risk today, Leo," he said, his voice surprisingly calm. "I believed the truth was worth the risk, sir," I replied. "You protected the company's reputation while still ensuring justice was served," he continued, a note of finality in his voice. "That shows leadership." He stood up. "Effective immediately, I'm promoting you to Director of Enterprise Development. You'll report directly to me and have full authority over all major client projects, including Apex. The promotion will come with a substantial salary increase, and you'll be a key voice in the company's future." I was stunned. "Thank you, sir. And as for Isabel," he said, his voice turning to ice, "she will be starting over. She's been reassigned to an entry-level, unpaid internship in the mailroom. No special privileges. If she wants a future at this company, she will earn it from the absolute bottom. As for Dustin, his employment has been terminated, effective immediately." He extended his hand. "Congratulations, Leo. You've earned it." In the weeks and months that followed, a new sense of order settled over Innovate Dynamics. My promotion was announced company-wide, and the Apex contract was officially signed, a landmark deal that put our company on the map. But as you know, every story has its loose ends. You're probably wondering what happened to Izzy and Dustin. Dustin, as it turned out, found it nearly impossible to find another job in the tech industry. Word travels fast, and the story of the disastrous Apex presentation, while not public knowledge, became something of an inside industry legend. Being fired for colluding to sabotage a senior manager isn't exactly a great look on a resume. The last I heard, he had moved back in with his parents in another state and was working a retail job. As for Izzy, her fresh start in the mailroom lasted exactly 2 weeks. The humiliation was too much for her to bear. One day, she just didn't show up. She sent a one-line resignation email to HR and vanished. About 6 months later, I saw an article in a business journal. Isabel Reynolds, daughter of Innovate CEO, launches new tech startup. She had used her trust fund and her father's name to try and build her own empire. I followed the story with a morbid curiosity. Her company, which was based on a flashy but ultimately hollow business plan, burned through its initial capital in less than a year. She couldn't attract serious talent, and potential investors were wary. The article mentioned rumors of a past professional incident that cast a shadow on her credibility. Her company folded quietly, another casualty of arrogance and a lack of substance. The last I heard of her was through a former colleague who had a friend in her social circle. Izzy had moved to the East Coast, far from the tech world she had tried and failed to conquer. She was living a quiet, unremarkable life, working an administrative job at a nonprofit. The fire and ambition she once had were gone, replaced by a quiet bitterness. She had been given every advantage, every opportunity, and had squandered it all because she wasn't willing to do the one thing that truly matters: the work. She learned the hard way that a famous last name and a fancy degree can open doors, but it's character and integrity that keep you in the room. Her father, Arthur, never mentioned her to me again. It was as if that chapter of his life was closed. He had given her a chance to swim, and she had chosen to sink. And what about me? Well, life changed, but perhaps not in the way you might expect. Leading the Apex initiative from my new position as director was the biggest challenge of my career, and also the most rewarding. We delivered the project on time and under budget, and it was a massive success. The promotion and the bonuses that came with it were life-changing. I was finally financially secure in a way I had only dreamed of. I had the respect of my colleagues and the complete trust of my CEO. I had won. But after the dust settled, after the victory parties and the congratulatory emails died down, I took a hard look at my life. I had spent 6 years in a relentless, all-consuming climb up the corporate ladder. The battle with Izzy had forced me to be strategic, ruthless, and to take risks I never thought I was capable of. And while it led to success, it also took a toll. I realized I didn't want my life to be a series of battles. I wanted peace. So, I made some changes. I used a portion of my bonus to take my first real vacation in years. I went to Italy for 3 weeks. I turned off my work phone, ate pasta, drank wine, and walked through ancient streets. I remembered that there was a world outside of project deadlines and corporate politics. When I came back, I established new boundaries. I stopped working until midnight. I started leaving the office at 5:30 p.m. to go to the gym or meet friends for dinner. I delegated more, trusting the capable team I had built around me. I found that the less I obsessed over work, the more creative and effective I became when I was actually there. The incident with Izzy was a crucible. It forced me to fight for my professional life, and in doing so, it taught me what was truly worth fighting for. It wasn't about a title or a bigger salary. It was about integrity. It was about standing up for the value of hard work and honesty. And once I had proven that to myself and to everyone else, I was free. Free to define success on my own terms. Today, I still love my job, but I also love my life outside of it. The corporate world is full of people like Izzy, those who believe they are entitled to a shortcut to the top. But I've learned that true, lasting success isn't a destination you can steal a map to. It's a journey you have to walk yourself, one honest step at a time. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It's not always easy to share these moments, but your support makes it worthwhile. Have you ever had to stand up to someone in a position of power who was treating you unfairly? I would love to hear about your experiences in the comments below. Your stories give me, and so many others, strength. And if you found this story compelling, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel for more stories about navigating life's challenges. Thanks again for being here.